Thank you. Welcome back. You're watching New Day KE into the discussion segment, and we'll be making sense of the passing on of the second president of the Republic of Kenya, Mzee Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi, who was star deemed yesterday on the 4th of February 2020. He served as the president between 1978 and 2002. And all the 24-year period, there were, of course, developments, especially in the 1982 coup, and how he managed to outmaneuver the crisis in the region and balanced Kenya's interests during the Cold War period that led to the end of the Soviet Empire or Union and the collapse of the Berlin Wall in early 1991. We'll be joined in the next 1 hour or so by the Member of Parliament for Kitui Central Constituency, Dr. Makalimulu. Good morning. I do appreciate your time. Thank you for coming. Next to him, for gender purposes, is nominated Senator Rose Nyamunga. She equally doubles up as the Speaker of the Senate. Good morning.
Good morning.
Asante sana. And next to me is the former Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly in the historic time, and Kenya managed to maneuver the crisis at the time during the Mkati Nusu government, and he served alongside Kenneth Marende. That is Farah Maalim, Honorable. Thank you so much for joining us. I do appreciate your time. Professor Hezron Mugambi on my far right commentates on politics and governance issues in the country. Gentlemen and a lady, I do appreciate your time. Starting off with you, because you have been the Alibat here, Mheshimiwa, and a lot has transpired between 1978 and 2002. Interestingly, to just mention this, was born at the height of the elections that he won in 1992. So never had chance to drink the Camel the Nyayo milk. Therefore, more or less, it's a story for us. But all the same, though, reading back on Moi, he was a man who was of different contrast, formidable in argument, yet so wonderfully kind in private, according to those who have worked with him. What do you make of the man who served as the longest president in the Republic of Kenya?
Yeah, thank you very much. Let me start by, first of all, conveying my condolences to the family and to Kenyans in general, because us as Kenyans, I don't think anybody will really talk about mentioning Moi. What I want to say about Moi, I'm a beneficiary of the milk, actually. I took that milk in the primary school, and as we remember him, because of that milk, I think there are also very many other things we could remember Moi for. I've been reading the papers, and one thing which has not come out clearly, for me, from the region I come from, there is something we used to call kuzuia umomonyoko wa udongo. That is environmental conservation.
Landslides.
In our region, in Ukambani, we did a lot, led by the former president. And to me, that is really not coming out as I see leaders talk about Moi. So that was very important for us as a region. At the same time, the philosophy of love, unity, and peace was really important for this country. I think when you look around our neighbors, there was a lot of problem during Moi tenure. And we managed as a country to remain just that a peaceful country, surrounded by all these other problems. I really wouldn't, maybe our speaker will tell us, because I think at that time he was also in leadership. But for us, I always ask myself, what really was happening that he was able to hold Kenya as a country, despite all these other surrounding challenges with the Somali, with the Uganda. That time, Uganda was also in chaos. And I think really we have a reason to thank God for President Moi and the many years he led this country. I'm sure, like any other leader, there were challenges, and challenges are expected of any leadership. The good thing is, despite the challenges, he was able to maneuver and get the country through. But for me, what I like most about, and I always say this to me was a climax. I watched Moi as he was handing over power to Kibaki. And the statement I like most is when he said, if I've wronged anybody in this country, I say sorry. And I ask Kenyans, if you might also have wronged me, I take this opportunity to say, nimekusamehe. So to me, that statement was really a very good statement. And what surprised me is when he was handing over the instruments of power, we were saying, I was kind of Bill Moi. And he had already apologized to Kenyans that in case I wronged you. So I think it's high time we learn the art of forgiving. When somebody says, forgive me, let's pick it from our heart and say, we forgive you, and we move on. That would be my concluding shot for now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Senator Rose Nyamunga, your take on...
Yeah, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to come and discuss these issues that are at hand. But first of all, I want to send my message also of condolence to the family of the late President Moi and the whole nation, because we are mourning a statesman by any standards. And as we mourn the president, I think it would be very important for us to recognize the fact that it is a time for mourning for his family. And it is not a time to settle scores or to say some of the things that may not be very pleasing to the family, more so right now, because I've seen there's a lot in the social media. We are free to say whatever we want to say, but it's very important that we are sensitive to some things. It is not time for us now to start judging the president, because that is not what is being presented right now. Okay. Right now we are mourning a president, somebody who worked in this country. If you look at the history of President Moi, it is a long history. From a herds boy to a teacher, to a politician, an MP, assistant minister, to a minister, to vice president, and then to the president. And it is like over 40 going to 50 years. Okay. So this is one person that we will celebrate. We want to celebrate him. And we also know that nobody is perfect, and being head of state, it's not possible that you are perfect. Not even being an MP like me. Okay. Yeah, there are so many people who see the very bad part of you, and there are people who love you and see that you are doing a good job. Okay. So that is not what we are doing right now. What I remember President Moi for me, he came to power when I was already in high school. So I did not even benefit from the milk. So I'm not a milk baby. I did not even go to the National Youth Service. So that is where I am. But what I remember about Moi when he took over is that he has shown consistently his level of humility. And that humility, you see it even in his children. We are serving with the Senator Gideon. Yep. You see that in him. And he is somebody who has time for everybody. If he meets you, he will have a second for you and just to talk to you. So you can see it reflected. Even in the member of the Kurogai. Yes, Raymond. I also served with Raymond in the last parliament. You see that humility. And you also see that with humility, there's a lot of discipline that went with Moi. In the cabinet, in the national, we could say he was a dictator. But even in your home, you are a dictator to some extent for you to come up with very good citizens. Okay. So there is a mixture of everything. So I wouldn't want to talk about the negatives of Moi right now, but I want to talk about the good things that I remember him with. I remember him as somebody who was very selfless and very hands-on. As children, the number of schools that he built, and apart from being having humility, he was also a very good Christian. Okay. And the number of schools he built, the number of churches he supported, the number of families, Moi was also very spot on. Something happens and he would not wait. He will take a decision immediately. So I like that, because sometimes it is good to think through things, but sometimes it's also good just to make a decision, which he did. And most of the time, decisions were not very bad. The only thing that may falter is the way he sacked people from responsibilities. And I think that one affected very many people and very many families. So I remember him with the things that, and many more. Okay. Yeah, I can talk the whole day about President Moi, but I can remember him with very, very good things that he did to this country. Okay, let me head to Professor Hezron Mugambi. In terms of the governance and the political posture of Moi, he was many in one. I mean, he was packaged, and one of his strengths, or rather his strength, was the unpredictable nature, his unpredictability of doing things and turning things around. What's your scorecard of the Moi?
Thank you very much for having us, Pastor Case. I also want to join my friends in saying Pole to the family and mourning, but also secondly to mourn our children who died in Kakamega. You know, this has overshadowed what happened in Kakamega. And you know, we lost 14 children and others are in hospital, so we wish them well. Coming back to our topic, I think Moi was a leader in his own right and in his own way. You must, when you look at back at the way he ruled, or he was a leader during that 24 years, and even before then, because as Mheshimiwa Rose has said, he was, a teacher, a leader in his own right, then becoming a politician, assistant minister, minister. All that time, actually, cumulatively, the time he became, he was a leader, is old in that sense than myself. If I look at my age versus the time he was a leader in, throughout all these positions in Kenya, that is more than my age. And I want to say that he was a real astute leader in the sense in which he was very, very firm. One of those things which cut across and which compares unfavorably with other leaders during that time is that he was a very firm leader. Once he decided that this is what I want to do, he will do it with passion. And I think that is where other definitions will then classify him as an democratic leader, because he believed in what he chose to pick on and move on with. And in terms of governance, because that is what you have asked, I think he can be described as an African strongman, because most of the African strongmen, that is how they ruled their countries. But an exception in Moi's rule was that he had also a very, what you could describe as a human heart. People were at the center of his leadership. And you will see that through his policies. One of those policies I will point out very clearly, and which has not been pointed out before here, is on education.
Okay.
He had a passion to ensure that his policies on education touched as many as possible. One of the challenges we have with African education, or education in Africa, is that it tends to be play more of a gatekeeping role than a state of affairs which will enable as many people or as many children as possible to attain an education. But Moi was a socialist in that sense. He came out to ensure that as many Kenyan children went or got an education, and that is why he had to change to 844, or he had to change the education system, which was there then, to 844. And the policies which were attendant to it were to ensure that as many children attended school. And that is why he introduced what Mheshimiwa Daktari here talked about, the school milk. The school milk program was basically, which I enjoyed as well, I must say. I also got that milk in school, and I partake in it. Yeah, so was to ensure that as many children came to school, and that was a bait, one of the baits to ensure that children...
There's enrollment.
An increase in enrollment. Remembering that those days, enrollment was also not very good in our school system. So just picking on that as education and the way he funded education system at that time, with the challenges, of course, which were there, you can say that this is a leader who was very strong, very firm, and he ensured that the interests of his people, of his children, so to speak, were taken care of. Also, when you look at, generally speaking, the way he led the country, from a single party,
multi-party,
to multi-party, even with that pressure, you will see that he was, and the way he used to speak about multi-party and single party, and the challenges which would be attendant to it, and the challenges which we have today versus the challenges which were there that time, you will see that he was a leader who was really concerned with his people and the way forward for the country.
Okay, Honorable Farah Maalim, you yesterday were at the Cabernet home of the late Mzee, signing the condolence book and eulogizing the as second president of the Republic of Kenya. When you look at the years that he was in power, the 24 years that he was the president of the Republic, I mean, a lot happened. The Cold War, I mean, the collapse of the Soviet Empire, the collapse of the Berlin Wall, the struggle for multi-party democracy in the country. When you look at Moi, was he the hard person, the hard personality who balanced between patience, the Kenyan agenda, and equally Kenya's interests amid competing influence from the West, especially the communists and the capitalists?
There was in the 60s, the late Nyerere was asked whether Tanzania is leaning more towards the East as opposed to the West, which of course could be translated that way because he introduced what he called the African socialism, scientific socialism, and it was
Ujamaa.
Ujamaa. He said we're not inclined towards the West, and we're not inclined towards the East. We're inclined towards making a progress and going forward. We'll neither go West nor East, but we'll go forward. Moi was able to balance that antagonism between the West and the East in a very powerful manner, and maintained his relationship. For example, I'll tell you one thing. The Republic of Iran, the Islamic Republic of Iran, was supposed to be some kind of a pariah those days in the eyes of the major Western bloc those days, the capitalist bloc, because of the manner they dealt with Americans. Remember, they held Americans hostages.
That was the revolution in 1979.
The revolution, yeah, and a lot of it. And Moi went to Iran. Moi was a good friend of the Iranians. I think he went twice to Iran. He did not care. He looked about the interests of Kenya and wherever that interest itself could be secured. And at that time, he was going to Iran for purposes of oil. He was there. I think with all the imperfections that happened under him, because there were certain very sad things that happened when he was in power. The Wagala massacre happened when he was in power. The
Pokot
massacre in Garissa, the Bola Khartas massacre happened when he was in power. The Malkamari massacre, which were three that stick out in the history of the people of northern Kenya, and of course the Pokot. All these things happened when he was in power. But when you very closely decipher and try and find out exactly who were responsible for some of those things, it'll be intriguing and very interesting to see how history is going to bring out that. Because the government is a big thing, the whole bus. Too many people were inside it. And he is one person who really cared for the interest and the welfare of every Kenyan. Before Moi came to power, I remember in the 70s, the mid-70s, when we finished school, secondary school, and we were going to Jogo House those days. In 78, when the president passed on, there were 38 high schools that were approved, because for a high school to be set up in anywhere, it had to be approved by the Ministry of Education. Out of that 78, I think only 10 or 15 that were outside Central Province. The rest of them were all in Central Province. And we went as young men who were looking for schools that time doing for the A levels up to the O levels. And I remember the watchman at Jogo House talked to me in Kikuyu. and probably I did not look that Somali. And when I told him, no, I don't understand, he said, and where are you from? I said, I'm a Somali. He said, Shifta. That's the word he used against me. What are you coming to do here? So when the Chunga Ngombe na ngamia huko kwenu, hapa hapana kwenu. I mean, it was that bad those days. The country there was a serious state capture, and basically Kenyatta was a paramount tribal chief. This is the reality of the matter, and who basically had the state. And with all respect to him, because I respect him also for all the good things he did in basically playing a very pivotal role in the liberation of our own country before independence, and the efforts he did in the land rights. So Kenyatta had his own history. But at the time when he was in power for the 15 years, that was a tribal clique that was running the state here. For the first time, I mean, let's call a spade a spade. It's good for us to be able to record history so that we are able to avoid, or rather, try and evade those kind of pitfalls. for the first time. Before that, it was Tim Gatende, it was the PC Rift Valley, it was Mungai, you know, the SCP Mungai, the one who is said to have slapped Moi as a deputy president, as a vice president, and who later fled the country, and then Goroko. So basically, it was there. And Kenyatta was very old for him to have, I think, a very commanding role on some of those things. Or whether that laissez-faire was there, God knows. When he came to power, Moi came to power, the most powerful people who worked in this country and who literally were the prime ministers of this country was Kerine for a while, Jonjo, of course, Gigi Kariuki, Nyachai, the most powerful, what do you call, chief secretary, head of civil service that time, Hezekiah Oyugi, who literally ran the place, he ran this country, General Mohammed, after the coup, was so powerful that you basically, whatever he said was law. You get my point? Haji was a very powerful PC who was the chairman of the PCs. So what I'm trying to tell you, Sharif Nasir was from the Coast Province and basically had a very powerful say in the party. Then this was a nation called Kenya, no longer defined by a clique of tribal, you know, folks who surround the president at that time and talk in their own vernacular. You get my point? Eat their own favorite dishes. You understand my point? And all those things. This man was a nationalist. He united this country. Of course, the unification of the country was done by the colonialists in the manner they drew the map. But he united. There's a difference between unification and uniting. He united this country and brought these people together as one nation. For us all to appreciate that we had a Kenya, that we all... And then what did he do? As you put it, when I first came to Parliament myself, in 1992 December, we were taking 2 students to the National University maximum from the province. It would occasionally be only 1. And then of course, I took an affirmative action motion through quota system to Parliament, which was basically a private member's motion. And when I went out there to exactly say, people like Biwot almost shed tears there and said, is that the situation back at home? Yeah. And when it came out, Ntimama offered to come and second that motion. There was a small clique of Northeastern Province members of Parliament who were Kanu hawks, politicians, and they ran out there and say, if this thing goes and gets implemented, the opposition gets a name, Farah is going to give us problems in the next elections. He said he doesn't give a damn about it. What he cares is those children from Northern Kenya to access education. And I remember in 1 year, from a total student population of 65 students from Northern Kenya.
Yes, in the universities.
In the universities, Nepusa, Northeastern Province University Station. And I was the patron that time. And 80% of them either were born in urban settings like Kakamega, like Kitale, Nairobi, Mombasa, and the rest of them. Or were from national schools. The few who managed to get to Alliance, because one student would get to Alliance every year from Northeastern Province. In 1 year only, Moi, through that affirmative action and the lowered grades, we took 550 students in 1 year to universities, to scholarships outside the country. He said he doesn't care. When those members of Parliament went to him, he was told Lesirma, who was at that time, one time the PS in the Ministry of Education, and William Boit, who was in MTC, because from 2, 3, 5 students every year coming from the province, William Boit took 331 year only, and all the way down to grades of D+. When they went to him and he asked, why are you supporting Ford Asili? He did not even know whether it was in Fort Kenya. He said, I'm not supporting Ford Asili, I'm supporting students from the north. He actually said Somali students. And he said, is that so? Yes. He said, continue. Okay. I was taken to him in the State House. And he literally told me, I want to give development to your people in areas. These people have been left out by the colonialists. They've been left out by the subsequent governments. And even in my government, he says, I don't get people pushing for their interests from my own political class here. So in a sense, what I can tell you is that the man had a heart. He had a heart for the people of this country. Okay. And it's only during his reign that you could see an Orma being in a DC or day, you know what I mean? Yep. Small tribes. What do you call these people? the Masais who live among
The Gems.
the Gems. You could see in Gems. You
Gems.
could see Somalis basically getting their share, the Borans, the Gabra, the Rendile, you know, the coastal guys. Before that, you would come into an office and find that the people in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs before Moi came to power. I'm told one time the deliberations were carried out in a vernacular. And Odero Joey, who did not understand when he questioned it. So the fact of the matter is we have a history. And sadly enough, let me tell you, sadly enough, and let me just finish this.
Okay, finish up.
Sadly enough, I remember when this motion was implemented by Kenya Medical Training College's director those days, who was called William Boyd. He told me, Farah, we're going to use this as a pilot project. If it fails and these people do not perform very well in the first year, we are not going to compromise the academic excellence of these institutions. We will go back to merit. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
Equal merit for everybody. And he took students with as low as a C- into pharmacy those days. And pharmacy used to be, diploma in pharmacy was even more popular than degrees in the University of Nairobi, other than medicine and the rest. Do you know what happened? Out of 11 students he took into that faculty, 10 of them became the 10 top students in the class. And he called me and told me, those days there were no mobiles. He called the parliament. He told me, Farah, come. This is what I have. He says, because these people never had an opportunity. If a student gets a D+ from northern Kenya or from the remote areas of Turkana, it's not because the student is not bright enough. It's because he has never had an opportunity. There can only be equal merit if there's equal opportunity. We are going back now to the Kenyatta Days things through the Ministry of Education.
Okay.
Pulling back all the teachers, hang on a minute, pulling back all the teachers from Northeastern Province, allowing those students to be without any teachers, and not allowing C- and D+ from our region and from other marginal areas to be trained as teachers. You get my point? So you can see we are already going back into a stratified, a divided nation in which some are supposed to be a permanent underclass and some are supposed to be the elite of one way or the other.
Okay.
So we miss him, and it's important that we celebrate all the good things he did. That man, I opposed him myself right to the end. I never voted for him as a president in the elections.
In the two elections, 92,
in the two elections, 92 and 97. But one thing I can admit very good is that he was a good man. Dictator, I'm beginning to have my doubts about it. Was he farmer or was he dictator? When you go and try and do a coup against him, you know what I mean?
All right.
I was watching my good brother, Koigo Mere. Koigo Mere wanted to overthrow the country through violent means. and of course, he never used to kill. I think the only people who were hanged were Ochuka and Okidi, is it? I don't know of anybody else. Yeah? Okumu and Okumu Okidi there was a name, Okumu.
Okay, that was in the aftermath of the foiled coup in 1982.
Yes.
Honorable Nyamunga, if I may come to you, Farah talked about the issue of inclusivity, the unity of the country, and the cohesive nature of the country. I mean, and we are in the midst of a process that the President and Raila Odinga say is the point with which we want to restore unity, with which we want to prosper as a country. But Moi defied all the odds and managed to glue Kenyans together in the height of the pressure from the international community, the exogenous pressure, and equally back at home here. But he managed to organize his cards very well and shelved the interest. He was for the minority communities to be in government, equally as the majority. He wanted power to be shared all across the board. What do you think is done differently at the moment that might be the precipitation point of a fallout in Kenya if it is to happen today?
Yeah, I think it is, I'm really put aback because I begin to wonder, because I look at what President Moi stood for, and Mheshimiwa has taken us through it, and what, say, somebody like Raila, who was really opposing the president, the same thing he stands for is the same thing that I saw the president stands for, or stood for. But I don't know where the country slipped. Because if we had Moi, who stood for unity, inclusivity, everything, then he handed it over. And during the President Kibaki, that is the time everybody says that the country experienced a lot of economic growth. And then now, look at it now, we are back to, it's like we are disintegrated. All the gains that were made by Moi, we lost it. But I'm wondering, where did we lose it? And I think that's why we, and the region where I come from, we have always been up again, up in arms.
In opposition.
In the opposition. And our main agenda in the opposition is the same thing that Farah said that Moi stood for. Moi stood for unity. And I believe I can say it and confirm that Moi stood for unity, inclusivity, all this. But is it these 10 years that we lost it, or it was something that was brewing underground? Because all of a sudden we lost it. And Kenya has drifted so much. So I believe Moi managed to put Kenya together, and that is where BBI also comes in. We put Kenya together, inclusivity, equity in terms of resource distribution, the things that you will call good governance.
Okay.
That is what BBI stands for. That is what President Moi stood for. But let me tell you, I think there are people that when the president is busy streamlining things, they are busy undoing it. I think Kenya has been taken over by some cartels. It is the cartels that drag Kenya backwards. Because you see the president has a clear agenda. You can see the opposition has a very clear agenda. Yet, Kenya does not achieve what it's supposed to achieve.
Okay.
So what is it? I think it is a cartel. So it is this cartel that has to be broken. We all know there are cartels. In every government, you go to the county governments, there are cartels. Come to the national government, there are cartels. So are these cartels serving the same presidents working, or are they on their own? So I believe that right now, with the institutions that we have in place, we should be able to break cartels once and for all and move this country to the right direction.
Okay.
And that is why BBI is also very critical. And I think we should be positive also with it and look at what is it. Anybody who has an agenda, it is the best thing is to bring it on board,
okay,
include it, and let's come up with a very good document that is for all Kenyans, that will achieve what we would want Kenya to achieve, and then we see, the issue of cartels has to be broken totally. Okay,
I'll come to Honorable Makali Mulu and Professor Hezron Mugambe. Because of time, we need to hit the break here on the program. When we come back, we'll continue with the unit aspect and whether President Moi foresaw, he prophesied the issue of unity in the country, where he said, do not all the time prioritize your interests, but that of the country. Make Kenya agenda number one. That was before he left power and asked for forgiveness before handing over the instruments of power at Uhuru Park here in Nairobi to President Emilio Mwai Kibaki, who retired in 2013. The number is 0791 789990. The hashtag on Twitter is NewDayK. The short SMS code is 40920. And as we go on break, we'll leave you with the bites of Musalia Mudavadi, Raymond Moi, the son of Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi, and the Deputy President William Ruto.
For the right things, firm for order, firm for discipline. This is one thing that
is it one thing now?
Moi likes. There are different circumstances. Maybe people are freer. Maybe people want to exercise their democratic rights more freely. That is their position. But I'm talking about Moi, not for purposes of comparing it with the current leadership, but I'm talking of Moi to give him a tribute that he deserves.
Against the expectations of many, President Moi led the reforms that enabled Kenya to enjoy vigorous de facto and de jure multi-party democracy, as well as civil and political freedoms. He submitted himself to presidential term limits, graciously entering a dignified retirement. God has been kind to him as he enjoyed many peaceful years outside the presidency of Kenya.
When I heard it, I was in Nakuru. I had to come back. I would like to thank all Kenyans for the concern and the support that they have given my family. We are made to believe that Mzee was born in 1924. But I would assume, and we all Kenyans, maybe Mzee was even slightly more than the 95 years that we know. So it is not really with sadness. It is more of us celebrating his life.
Welcome back. You're watching the program. We are into the second segment of the discussion here, which regards, of course, the passing on of the second president of the Republic of Kenya, Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi, yesterday, 4th of February 2020, at the Nairobi Hospital here in the country. A cocktail of leaders have eulogized Moi as a strong statesman who balanced the affairs of the country, but all the same, his priority remained a united Kenya, and that was his rallying call before he left power and handed over the instruments of power in 2002 to Emilio Mwai Kibaki. Here are some of the leaders who yesterday were at the Leaf Funeral Home here in Nairobi, among them Bungoma Senator Moses Wetangula, the leader of the majority party in the National Assembly, Adan Duale, among others.
Siasa mbaya, maisha mbaya. If you mess the politics of the country, you are not messing politics alone. You are messing the economy, you are messing the social fabric of our people, and you are messing each and every Kenyan regardless of where they come from.
He was one person who would tell you to help people, because he said that as a leader you must know the problems of the people.
I've said he ran this country through very turbulent times, through very difficult times, and the Mwakenya crackdown and all those other dark parts of our history happened during his reign. But what is important is now that we are looking back to the man we know. He held this country together to where we are. And I think those transgressions can be forgiven because we want to unite the country and move forward.
Okay, we'll be having other bites of the leaders who yesterday were present equally at the cabinet home of the late president here in Nairobi. Honorable Makali Mula, I was on you before we went on break, and we were on the issue of unity of the country. And Kenya is appreciated as perhaps a bastion of hope when it comes to conflict-fleeing, say, refugees from the DRC, Burundi, Rwanda, Uganda, Somalia, and Ethiopia, now South Sudan. But when you see what Moi prophesied in 2002 before he left power was that please do not prioritize your interest at the expense of the unity of the country. That seems to be the dotting point of our electoral cycle, 2007, 2013, 2017, all contested. We now have an initiative which is set to restore the prosperity of this country. Can we offer the clean political break that Kenya needs?
Yeah, thank you very much. Maybe before I talk about the unity, let's just support my colleagues, Ross and our speaker. You know, I remember at one point, President Moi was saying, he's a driver of a bus, and this bus has everybody in it. In our Korah, in our pastors, it has everybody in it. And when I look at that statement coming from the head of state, I think it was just saying as a leader, if you don't provide firmness, as he was saying, people can easily take advantage of you, and that's what the cartels Honorable Rose is talking about. And to me, one thing I like about Moi is that he preached unity, because it's one of the, if you look at the Nyayo philosophy, unity was...
Peace, love, and unity.
And also practice it. I can tell you for sure, in our regional Kambani, the only time we had very many ministers was during Moi tenure. You go to Western Kenya, the same story. You go to Northern Kenya, the same story.
The head of civil service was one time from Professor Mbiti.
At one point, Professor Mbili was the head of civil service. That was a very powerful man. Yes. At another time, Nyachai was the head of civil service. Very powerful.
When is the Kamba?
Oyugi, yes. At another time, very powerful.
General Mohammed.
So, General Mohammed. So you could see Moi believed in Kenya as a country. And he was able to bring out the fact that Kenya is a country. None of these regions is lacking people who can lead and people who can be trusted. Because when he picks somebody like Nasir from Coast, and trust him to an extent that whatever Nasir would say, it becomes the rule of this country. So what we are saying is, there are some of us who are leaders who preach unity, but when you look at what is happening, you don't see even a single out of...
Okay, well, you'll come to the unity aspect. Let me just pick this call from our viewer who is calling us or reaching us from the county of Turkana. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning to you. Habari asubuhi.
Salama kabisa.
Talk to us about Mzee Moi.
Okay, what I want to contribute is that, okay, I was young by the time that Daniel Moi was the president. But actually, I want to celebrate him.
Okay.
I want to celebrate him a lot because mimi naonanga vitu mingi sana hapa Turkana ambaye imesemekana Moi ndiye alifanya hii, Moi ndiye alifanya tukafaulu kwa njia moja ama nyingine. Even I come from Lukchogo, where we are bordering Sudan and Kenya. Lukchogo is in the Sudan. But kitu nyuwa nasikia ni kwamba Moi ndiye alipigania paka hiyo border mahali sasa hivi iko Moi ndiye alipigania. So in one way or another, actually I want to celebrate him and I condole with his family. nawapatia pole.
Okay.
Kutoka kwangu. Yes.
Asante sana. Thank you so much for your contribution. We do cherish, of course, your input here on the program. Equally, the number is 07914788990, and we like to hear from you from all over the world, from all over the country, wherever you are tuned in from this discussion. Yes, Mheshimiwa, continue.
Yeah, so what I was saying is, and I can actually mention more and more. For example, Ferris Quino. Quino was a Pokomo. Was he a Pokomo?
Yes.
A very minority, a small tribe.
Yes.
But he was telling them, even the Pokomos of this country can be at the top there, and we respect them. And to me, I think this is the way to go. That when we talk about national unity, let's provide opportunities to Kenyans to prove to the rest of Kenya that they are able. But this idea where, as Farah was saying earlier, that you go to an office and you find people are talking their vernacular, their mother tongue, and this is an official place. We should really resist that. And the other thing I like about President Moi, and which I think most of us leaders, this is a big challenge, and you take this challenge, is the issue of keeping time.
Punctuality.
Yeah, the principle of punctuality. Moi will never keep Kenyans waiting for him. If he says 10, he's there by 10. And these days we have leaders who tell you, I'm coming at 10, they come at 4. Imagine keeping Kenyans thousands, and since you are a leader, there will be thousands and thousands waiting for you. Imagine the man hours lost, waiting for someone just to collab with them. And I think we really need to change the way we are doing things. And that's why you see we are able to move the country to the next level. If we pick some of this issue, these virtues which are important to Kenyans. And Moi was always early in the morning. He goes to church. At times when for me, like a leader, you need to,
with the crowd.
the role modeling. The fact that a president is able to wake up early in the morning, and by 10 he's sitting in a church somewhere, and that is you can see what he said, when I die, he's already singled out a hymn, forever in the Lord, to be played when he's been buried. So you can see the kind of the role modeling. When young Kenyans see that, I see, a whole president can even decide which song will be played when he's been buried. It shows you are serious leader. And I think these are kind of the basic things we need to practice as leaders. And to me, really, this issue of national unity is a challenge to all of us as leaders. We need to unite this country. The other day, you saw what happened in my own county with the BBI rally. We are talking about building bridges, then we are kicking one of us out of the meeting. Farah was there, Rose was there. To me, I think we need to accommodate different opinions. If we have to build these bridges to make Kenya a united country.
Okay, Prof, in secular society, and for that matter, Kenya being a constitutional democracy, you have the right to be offended, the right not to be offended by the opinion of others. And what transpired in Kitui over the weekend on Saturday during the BBI rally, to some was quite unfortunate. The Member of Parliament equally issued pressure in rejoinder to that alongside the Senator Kitui County, Enoch Wambua. And in view of that, in respect to what's happening at the moment, Moi, as one man, managed to stay around the unity boat in the country, and he had no affection for those who fancied tribalism. Rather, he said, as long as you have the Kenyan agenda in your heart, you are peace-loving, then that is the way to go. With many leaders today, we seem to be having the problem of gluing this country together and preaching cohesiveness. What do you think went wrong between 2002 and 2019? Oh, can I just pause you for a moment? You'll respond to that. I'll pick this call from Bungoma County. John Adamba reaching us from that county. Good morning, John.
Bushere bababudi.
Bushere, habari ya asubuhi.
Nakwambia ni mzuri, ni fresh kabisa, ni fresh kabisa.
You must have fond memories of President Moi. Talk to us.
Yes, wacha kwanza nimshukuru Mama Nyamunga. Mama Nyamunga, pokea kwanza congratulations zangu sana. Kuna kitu mama amezungumzia hapo, political cartels. Political cartels, yes. Na ni hao wanajaribu kulifanya taifa letu linaelekezwa katika njia mbaya.
Okay.
Yes. Na ningependa kutoa nafasi, kutoa maoni yangu kwa heshima ya rais wetu mzee mmoja ile alivyotuongoza. Hii vitu vya makateli vinafanya hata mapresident wetu hawawezi kutuongoza katika njia iliyo safi bwana. Na ningependa hiyo vitu vimaliza total. Hebu angalia bwana 207. Kuanzia 207 kufika hapa. Mimi ninaweza kusema marais ambao tunaongozwa nao sio marais wale ambao tunawapigia kura.
Okay.
Na ni wale wanatokea kwa njia ya katelo, ukiangalia kwa njia ya katelo, na ndio hata wanafanya president yote anakosa heshima, anakosa hata kuliongoza taifa kwa njia ile ambayo ni safi sana. Yes. Mama Nyamunga, nimesikiliza ile jambo na nimesema una maono mazuri na Mungu akubariki zaidi.
Okay,
thank you kwa kunisikiliza.
Asante sana. Thank you so much. John, reaching us from the county of Bungoma. Thank you. We cherish your contribution. Yes, Prof.
I just wanted to say that just to support what Honorable Muli has just said, you know, Moi was very many things, but one of those things which is very clear when you compare with other leaders within Africa and elsewhere, he believed in one particular thing, and that is being a statesman. That is why he will ensure that to avoid disunity, and we've been talking about disunity, the issue of unity, how do you make people feel Kenyans? Is to appoint Apokomu, is to appoint Aluo, is to appoint an Ogiek, is to appoint from all corners. BBI talks about shared prosperity. What other way would Kenyans enjoy this country and feel part of it than having people from different walks of life, from different communities, sharing these resources? Because state jobs are resources of this country. So Moi is one of those leaders who ensured that these resources were shared in terms of jobs, in terms of sharing what belongs to the state to the different communities. And for once, he never cared about where you came from, so long as, in his own belief, you will be able or are equal to that task. And if you look at his cabinet, and Dr. Mule has just talked about that, if you look at his cabinet, if you look at the PSS he picked, the senior state officers, you will see that they actually cut across communities of Kenya. They were actually what we now talk about the face of Kenya, which is not really the face of Kenya.
Okay.
And so that feeling of belonging, that feeling of patriotism naturally came out of him. Because people will see and have perception about what a government is. And that is what Moi's government was. It was a government of Kenya, and it was the face of Kenya. And people felt like they should participate. Number two, to put glue to that, he ensured that he had movements, what I will call social movements, to ensure that people also felt and participated in nation building. And one of those is what Daktari here, Mheshimiwa, has just said. This issue of soil erosion. He ensured that people participated in those social projects which will mitigate other issues which will affect Kenyans. And he put to it a program, a very important program, by the way, known as tree planting. His philosophy was always, ukikata moja, panda mbili. And now you know we are talking about Kenya having developed so much, and we are talking about forest cover being depleted. Below the 10%.
International standard, yes.
But look at what used to be there at that time. It is because of his philosophy. And that philosophy was part of his leadership. And that's why he called him a strongman, because he believed that this is the best way to go, and he cut out for that, and he ensured he had a team of people from across the country to ensure that this vision, which he had, to unite people, because unity is an ideal. But how do you reach that ideal? You start by involving people, by people believing in what you are saying, by people seeing your actions in that goal or in that direction, then following you, because they feel part of it. You cannot only, like now what we have nowadays is people talk about things which they don't do, which they actually are ideals which they don't believe in, because they don't take part or they don't show through action. But Moi is one person who said, this is going to happen, and it will happen. And you will see all things, all systems in his government are geared towards ensuring that happens.
Okay, thank you so much. Before I come to Honorable Farah, I want to take a call from a caller who is calling us from the county of Baringo, the home county where the former president was born. Good morning. Good morning. Morning to you. Habari ya asubuhi. Okay, talk to us. Yes, tunakusikia. Endelea tafadhali. Yes, we call on to our viewers to lessen the volume of their television sets so that we can be able to communicate effectively, and that would have been an important call from the county of that is Baringo, where the President Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi was born. Honorable Farah Maalim, and gentlemen and a lady, there's a lot to look at in terms of the general broad perspective, the extensive nature of the Moi approach to issues of diplomacy, and that is very clear. We'll be coming to that as we finish up the program here. But more importantly is the element of succession here, how he later managed to outmaneuver the interest, the factional interests at the time, the hard hurdles mounted by the likes of Kihika Kimani, Njenga Karume, and who at some point he was ruled out. Honorable Farah, I'm coming to you on that. And one thing that historians have written about Moi is his unpredictable nature, to the extent that even he was so disciplined, he will heed what Kenyatta said, he was by his side all the time, and so disciplined to the extent that he was Mr. Yes-man for Kenyatta, a man who knew what he was doing. Can the Deputy President William Ruto perhaps take some lessons from the Moi style of wanting to succeed his boss, if we are to go that way, unless or otherwise we might go the parliamentary system of governance by 2022? Is there something to copy from the late Moi for the DP William Ruto, to be specific?
The two things that Moi was, and none of them are qualities that you can easily find with the DP. The first quality is the patience. That enormous patience of being humiliated everywhere and taking it with a stride.
That's our leader.
Taking it with a stride and not having any hard feelings. Not having any hard feelings. Because even the man who slapped him, the SCP who slapped him,
he later allowed him to come to the country.
He allowed him later on to come to the country, and I think was even assisted with some resources. The other thing that Moi was, Moi never forgot the friends who stood by him in moments of need. If you stood by Moi, he'll stand by you. Even if after Njonjo was found culpable those days over that Usaliti thing, he still knew the good days he had with him. So they remained friends until the end. Until the end. Even Gigi Kariuki and a number of other people who, in a way, at some stage had kind of a divided loyalty. He protected them and supported them and assisted them for all their sake. And he never gave the impression of, he gave the impression as a president of firmness, but he never gave the impression of being brutal. You get my point?
Yeah. That's true.
And that essentially is the kind of stuff that you see. I know of a friend of mine. I actually saw him here. Well, I don't want to mention the name. We were together in the opposition. He jumped from Kanu towards the end. And of course, during Kibaki's time, because as soon as Kibaki came to power, as soon as Raila and the team that was there fighting to get Kibaki to power finished the job, within days they were shut out of State House. The clique, again, shielded and surrounded Kibaki.
That was the exit of the likes of Dr. Saleh Koskei.
No, whenever the old regime had gone, old regime went. But of course, there was the new regime and the people who supported the new regime. I mean, the Kibaki did not go there on his own. Kibaki was supported by Raila. He was supported by all those guys. By Kalonzo Musyoka. There was a total opposition. Saitoti. They were supported by all those people. So the moment, of course, Saitoti had a dual identity, who could double up also as a mountain person, as much as he could double up as a Maasai. But the rest of them were shut out of State House. So instantly, they were shut out. So the clique took over immediately. And it's because of that initial period. The first term of Kibaki was a very bad term. Very, very bad time. When Michuki would go public and say that, why do we need a new constitution? Moi is out of the office, or out of power now. In other words, he was
fighting an individual.
He was telling the country now that we have this thing back in the mountain where where there is an entitlement and it belongs to.
And one of our own.
And one of our own. There's no need to change the constitution. So in other words, he's, this is a guy who I remember, with all the respect I have for him also, there are a lot of awful things that happened during that first term. The second term is when, of course, Kibaki came in his element now. Because Kibaki was never tribalist in his own right himself. But, the first time he came out of an accident, and he was not in his element. The man was sick. And he became a president when he was already on a wheelchair. But second time is when, of course, he united the country. And we had the coalition government, which did a very good job. So you ask me whether Ruto can manage that. One, I don't think we're going to have a presidential election again. We've had our last presidential election in 2017. I think this country, the only way to save this country from a total collapse and total disintegration is to have a system that is essentially pure parliamentary and where you just go and seek your own constituency seat. Once you have the party that has got the maximum number of seats, then it's told to form the government. If it doesn't have a majority, which is 50% plus one of the members of parliament, then it goes into a coalition. A post-election coalition, not a pre-election coalition. You get my point? It goes into a coalition and then forms the government. That way, the party must have a manifesto and programs that are going to reflect the four corners of the country because you need everybody. I know some quarters right now they're saying, okay, if you have to go parliamentary, we have to redo the whole thing again, which means to guarantee themselves a disproportionate number of members of constituencies or through a proportional representation where they can have the majority there and still control. So still, instead of uniting the country, still at the back of the mind of some people is that ethnicity, that obsession with that we must have power always. And that's not right because that eventually is going to bring about the disintegration of the country. So the way I see it myself is that this man is gone. We will remember him for a very long time to come for all the good deeds he did. We were talking about the four corners of the country. I don't think we ever had a Kalenjin strong man except Biwot, who was called a total man. There was not a single other person. When Leting was there, Oyugi, who was a PS in charge of internal security, was more powerful than Joseph Leting.
That's true.
And you know that. And of course, Saleh Kosgei's period was a transitional period. And Saleh was a brilliant intellectual and scholar in her own right. And she did a fantastic job as much as she could. When they were handing over power, the man was humiliated in Uhuru Park. You see what I mean? But he took it with a stride.
When he came to himself hand over.
To hand over power. How do you humiliate a president who has ruled this country for 24 years? And the speech that was given by Kibaki at that time was the only blemish, on one of the few blemishes on Kibaki's rule. Was not a good speech. Here is a man handing over the instruments of government and the sword to you as the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Kenya. And you humiliate him. And so much so that Museveni, I'm told, they threatened to walk out of the place. And he said, this is not right, it doesn't work, this is primitive. But he took it with a stride. He allowed it and he said, people were saying, I remember one time we were saying Operation Moi out, Operation Moi out. He said, you people will come back and say Operation Moi in. What happened? What happened after Shot? We're all crying for Moi again. So basically, a lot of the things that happened and the intricacies and the coup attempts and all those were basically people seeking power. There's a difference between seeking emancipation for the society, the broader Kenyan society, and seeking power because you feel it is your turn to eat, it is your turn for entitlement, and take it at whatever cost, and then and then exercise it. So then now this is all but now coming back in perspective, and I think scholars like Professor Mugambi will have to write big books about these things.
All right. Okay, Honorable Nyamunga, when you look at the current developments and how they tend to be panning out in terms of the materialization of who will be the next leader in the country, there has been a lot of energy, especially from the Tanga wing of the ruling Jubilee Party, to the extent that they faulted the coming together of Odinga and Kenyatta, saying this was all about blocking our man DP from becoming the president in 2022. For Moi, though, it was a different cast. In 1976, 78, 77, he was a cool guy who never even had no intention whatsoever, was so much energy in regards to succeeding President Kenyatta, who passed on in 1978. In terms of the contrast and the comparison here, was he perhaps one man who fancied a united Kenya and believed that there was going to be a smooth process of transition from him to Kenyatta, unlike the current appetite, which seems to be heading the country in the wrong and wayward direction?
Yeah, I think it is very unfortunate that Kenyans are still stuck in the past. What I mean is that anybody looking for presidency now is looking for presidency for themselves, for a clique of them. They've not seen the bigger picture that Kenyans are looking for. Look, Kenyans are looking to a united nation where all the resources are distributed equitably among all the Kenyans. But the rate at which we are looking for presidency, or the Tanga team is operating, I've said it in many words. DP, I've always known him as somebody who is a Christian.
Okay.
And from my faith, or from my Christian perspective, it is very clear that presidency or leadership does not just come by force and just something that they are doing. We should go back to the basics as a nation and demystify leadership. I think this idea of absolute power is really giving Kenyans a nightmare, because people are looking for wealth and then they're looking for power.
Okay.
So it means you want to look, we want to get it at whatever cost. We should demystify, just as all my colleagues have said. We should make leadership very simple, less lucrative, such that everybody feels included and they are part and parcel of Kenya. The Tanga team, I think, in my view, they are still in the past. They don't know where Kenyans. I think we passed that, that absolute power, looking for power at whatever cost, no matter what. Kenyans, at least for me, I've passed that. And I'm now looking at a better Kenya, a united Kenya, where everybody feels they are Kenyans, just the way President Moi did it. In fact, when Moi became the president, we had, as a community, Luo community, we had 4 very serious ministers, and it was distributed across. So we should go back to where, and I can repeat, I don't know why Moi and Raila never managed to work together, yet they believed in the same. Raila believes in...
He came on board.
They came on board, yes. And
but
NDP was dissolved and merged into KANU.
Yeah, because what Moi stood for, that is exactly what Raila stands for. And he has been very consistent, saying that we need a Kenya which belongs to everybody, all the resources. Now we talk of even the regional governments. In my view, we should strengthen the regional resources, because we should not be looking at the national government as the only one which can provide resources, because that way we will still be lagging behind. But if we can have regional resources and develop those resources, I think being a president will not be a big deal for Kenyans. And looking for it, the way Tanga is looking for it, to me, that one is old-fashioned. I think time has passed for that, and Kenyans are not there. Kenyans have moved on. We want a better Kenya, a united Kenya, and we want a Kenya where all of us will feel that we belong to this nation. Yes, so Tanga is missing the point.
Okay, Honorable Makali Mulo, there is a lot to, because Moi was more or less the person, an individual who was self-contained. He had a lot as an individual, unlike the current crop of leaders who seem to be struggling in terms of uniting Kenyans. And his appetite was for all. He had a keen ear, he listened to all, and he was a man who followed up and did ensure that all things do transpire or are implemented. For that matter then, in terms of our outlook, generally, the political development seems to be affecting the other aspects in this country. Corruption is deep-rooted. There is investor fear from the quotas who need to invest in the country. Capital flight out of the Kenyan markets into safe havens like Ethiopia and Rwanda. And you look at the establishment in the country that regards the treasury, and there seems to be a lot that needs to be done in terms of the economy. As an economist, in your capacity before being a member of parliament, how do we then turn around and perhaps copy some lessons from Moi, who managed to navigate the country during the hard times of international pressure, money being withheld by the World Bank at the expense of human rights and other aspects, and perhaps set the country's economy to the path of prosperity?
Yeah, thank you. You know, I don't know. Today I'm making a lot of quotes from Moi, and maybe because I want to remind you also, it's the same Moi who said, "Siasa mbaya, maisha mbaya." Basically, what he was saying is that politics plays a very key role in terms of economic and social life of anybody in a country. And you remember, it's during Moi's tenure that even the IMF, the World Bank, actually suspended any development assistance to this country. And that's the time things got very bad for the country from an economic perspective. But I think one thing which played to his advantage was the fact that Kenyans believed in Moi, and to some extent they were united behind him as their leader. So even when things were getting very bad, Kenyans still believed Moi will come up with a strategy to get them out of that bad situation. And I think generally from an economic perspective, what we need to bear in mind is the fact that when people out there, the investors, when they think what I'll call the domestic environment is not conducive for their investment, because every investor wants to invest and make money. If you have no returns, you don't invest. So anybody who is out there will be thinking about, if I were to invest in Kenya, you look at the stability of the country in terms of politics, you look at the potential economic gains out of here, and other opportunities, because you also want your business to expand. And I think over time, this one thing, there's this assumption. You know, Kenyans, people have always said, we are the regional, you know, we are the regional powerhouse.
Yeah.
But I want to remind Kenyans that very soon, we will actually be number 5 or 6. Because when you look at what is happening in Ethiopia, when you look at what is happening in our neighborhood here, Tanzania, when you look at what is happening in Rwanda, we better be more careful than we are. As an economist, I would want to tell Kenyans, we better be more careful than we are. Because what are other countries doing? They are saying things have changed, circumstances have changed. And for us to move, we need to think about how to create businesses within Kenya and outside Kenya.
Okay.
The issue of ease of doing business. So that if I want to come from America and invest, I don't waste time. I just come here, 2 days, I've set up my business, and that's what other countries are doing. The other thing is, you can't lead an economy where you're always talking about 10% growth and you keep on achieving 5%. You'll never go anywhere.
Okay.
So if you talk about achieving 10% growth, you must work hard. Come up with strategies which will push you to that 10. For the last, you remember the Vision 2030?
Yep.
When was it developed? 2008.
Yes.
If I remember well.
Yes, Grand Coalition Government.
2008. Today is how many years?
That's 11 years. 12 years.
If you look at that document, the projection was Kenya will be growing at 10% every year. So 12 years down the line, we have always been between 5 and 6. Always. So you realize that any targets that document now are becoming unrealistic. And I think really it's time leaders in this country, all of us here included, because we are leaders in our own nature, it's time now we sat down and said, where did the rain start beating us? And I like the push now which is coming out on matters of corruption. On a serious note, I think now we are on the right track in terms of matters corruption.
Okay.
That if you are caught dealing with issues with corruption, you need to step aside and allow investigation to take place. And if you are cleared by the courts, you come back. If you are not cleared, pave way for other Kenyans. There are so many Kenyans who are qualified. I'm sure, Prof, we are not sure
Yes,
of
there
people who
are
are qualified.
thousands of them.
Pave way so that people can come. And in that case, we will be helping this country to move to the next level. And if we start assuming we are powerhouse,
okay,
very soon we'll be lamenting.
The assumption. Yeah. And Professor Ezron Mugambi, as we finish up, and this will be on a very important note because it defines what Kenya is and how it needs to, of course, drive its agenda. And this is the foreign policy and diplomacy. Moi managed to be one person who ensured that besides Kenya, other regional countries are a basis of peaceful tranquility, and he ensured that at some point the warring functions in Uganda signed peace agreement here in Nairobi, and equally he had reached out to Somalia after the overthrow of Mohamed Siad Barre in 1991. But today we have a maritime dispute with Somalia, which seems at the moment handled by the International Court of Justice. We have the Migingo Island issue still unresolved, and equally Kenya is in quest for the attendance of the non-permanent seat at the United Nations Security Council. However, though, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is all the time under the spotlight, under the radar, for lacking coherent strategy in terms of driving the Kenyan agenda. However, Moya's statements, of course, did things differently. What is the kind of strategy and measure that we need to adopt in present Kenya that if we are not to lose our position as the blue-eyed boy, then we'll save this country's reputation region-wise, continentally, and internationally?
I think perhaps you have kind of answered that question by the way you started asking it. And that is that we perhaps need to borrow from what President Moi used to do. That what is this which the president, former president used to do well in foreign policy and relations that we aren't doing since that time? How did the president keep Kenya ahead of other regional, countries in terms of foreign policy and relations? And you have just answered it, that being a strongman, because, I mean, foreign relations is a byproduct of the leadership of that country. What is the vision of the president or of the leadership of that country in terms of how we relate with our neighbors and our foreign policy, both in the continent and out of the continent? If you look at it very clearly, and Honorable has just talked about it in terms of economic affairs, what plan do we have in terms of relating with our country, in other, relating with other regional countries and African countries and countries out of the continent? I can tell you, our foreign policy keeps on, fluctuating, and looks like it is not very focused in terms of how the planning is done, how the strategy is done, to ensure that Kenya remains the top, as you have just said earlier, economically. Because all these things are related. You cannot talk about leadership, you cannot talk about economy, you cannot talk about foreign relations if the leadership of this country, of a particular country, is not very focused on how to relate all these things together. Once a country is united, it has a vision that is replicated in its foreign policy. And that is replicated in how it relates with other countries, both economically, politically, and otherwise. So what we need to do is to look back and track where our country lost focus in terms of how we relate with our neighbors and how to keep our country ahead of the pack. I can tell you that our foreign policy and our strategy in terms of relations seem to be either piecemeal or is not well thought out, so that it does not seem to put Kenya ahead regionally and internationally. And that's why sometimes you see flattering policies on particular issues. And you have just named one of it. How have we lobbied
the UN Security Council,
the UN Security Council for this seat? How have we lobbied and navigated the issues in Somalia, the issues in Sudan, the issues about Uganda and Migingo? We seem not to be very focused on how, as a country, we relate with our neighbors and elsewhere. And that has also penetrated our politics. And I'm very happy the speaker here has been talking about the history of how we've been doing these things. And if you look at, since President Moi left the country, we seem not to, in terms of leadership as a country, we seem not to be having very focused leadership, which is at the heart of the people and serving everybody else, so that, everybody else, if you look at TV and, listen to radio, everybody else is crying to the government.
All right.
Can the government help us? What does that mean? It shows that we have faltering leadership. We do not have leadership which is focused on ensuring this country moves and occupies the position really it is supposed to occupy, both regionally and internationally.
Okay, Honorable Farah Maalim, in 2 minutes, because of time, we need an easy, immediate fix to our foreign policy. How do we do that?
Well, I think it's going to take a lot of work to try and mend the ruptures. We lost out completely in our foreign policy because we put in a lady who was extremely arrogant. She's my good friend's wife, and she took it to the gutters. Djibouti offered to trade off with Kenya, either the chairmanship of IGAD, chairmanship of IGAD, or the UN Security Council. And Kenya was made to understand, was told take a pick, and we said no, we want everything. So then what happens? We've lost out on IGAD now. Sudan has taken it. Because it has to be done by consensus. Yeah. And if you have one member saying no, that's the end of it. No, the consensus now fell on Sudan. The executive secretary of IGAD is from Ethiopia right now. We've held that position for 12 good years.
That is Engineer Mahbub.
Engineer Mahbub held it for 12 good years.
That's true.
I don't know whether we're going to win the UN, the UNGA. By the way, it's not the UN Security Council that you're going to lobby with. You're going to the whole UNGA, UN General Assembly.
Okay.
And Djibouti is fighting very hard with all the other sectors. And I'm talking about the Arab world. Djibouti, by the way, is a member of 3 big, what do you call, organizations. It's a member of the Arab League. It's in the African Union. It's in the OIC. It's lobbying Francophones. And it's literally moving like hell. So this is a toss-up. Anybody could win, anybody could lose. We will see how it turns out.
Okay.
Right now, we have a situation, and we will see. You're talking about the blue-eyed boy of the region and how our economy was the best.
Yep.
We have lost that mantle. Our GDP is in 70+ billion US dollars.
Okay.
The GDP of Ethiopia is 100 billion today.
Okay.
And I travel to Ethiopia quite often.
Okay.
It is literally they're inviting investments from all the 4 corners of the world. And the Kenyans doing business there.
All right.
I met Kenyans in the hotels out there, literally coming to do business in every sector. I want to tell you one thing about the Kenyan political class and the need for us to have a departure. We have to make a clean break with that.
Briefly, because we seem to be having a way of running. Yep.
Yes, a clean break from that. Moi and Raila came together. And of course, Moi was faulted for having anointed his successor in the name of Uhuru and taken it through a process in Kasarani, which essentially was for all intents and purposes, looking a fair game, but the big man was there supporting him. What did we do? We left Kisirani. We call it Kisirani actually at that time. We left Kisirani. We came to Uhuru Park, and Raila, unknown to the rest of the friends who were with him in the Operation Rainbow, stood up there and said, "Simunajua Kibaki ndio sanatosha, ndio sametosha basi." So he did actually something worse than what Moi had done at the other end.
Asante.
What does that tell you? We have an obsession with power.
Okay.
And the need for us now to be honest. Honesty is the virtue, is the ultimate virtue.
Okay.
As leaders, we need to be honest of our own country. I'm not faulting Raila anyway. Raila has done such a powerful thing in this country in bringing out, in fighting for change all these years.
Asante.
But we will celebrate. For now, we are celebrating our late president. The economy of the country is in a free fall, by the way, let me tell you.
Okay.
Every sector of the economy is going to hell. You see the real estate. Today you could purchase a flat that you wouldn't purchase for 35 million shillings, for 16 million shillings.
Okay.
And it's still coming down. So we have a problem.
Okay.
I mean, we'll maybe discuss what were the causes of those problems earlier on.
Okay.
And talk about it. But then
Asante. Thank you so much, Honorable Farah Maalim. We have to end it there because of time. We have overrun by 10 minutes, but thank you so much for coming. Former Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly, Senator Rose Nyamunga, doubles up as the Senate Speaker. Thank you so much for coming. I do appreciate your time. Honorable Dr. Makali Mulu, economist, and above that, Member of Parliament for Kitui Central Constituency, Asante. And Professor Hezron Mugambi commented on issues regarding governance and politics in the country. And thank you to you too for the calls from Baringo, Turkana, and equally in Bungoma counties. As we celebrate the life of Mzee Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi, who passed on yesterday, 4th of February 2020, we'll still be giving you extensive coverage of the life and the moments of Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi. For him, though, strength across the world begins with strength at home, deterrence, not appeasement. And he was one man who was formidable in argument, yet so kind, wonderfully in private. And his star dimmed in 2020. He was born in 1924. So we are finishing up the program here, and Winnie Lubembe will be here with my doctor in about an hour's time. Thanks for watching. Tomorrow I'll be here in the morning, and we'll see you then. Bye-bye.
Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi, naapa kwamba nitakuwa mwaminifu kwa Jamhuri ya Kenya na kuitumikia kwa moyo wangu wote, na kwamba nitahifadhi, nitalinda na kuitetea katiba ya Kenya kwa mujibu wa sheria iliyowekwa. Ewe Mwenyezi Mungu nisaidie.
Nguruwe hujikanga na mafuta yake. Na Afrika itakwisha. Tulikuwa na bili ya kuleta Kenya Anti-Corruption Authority kwa bili. Ijapokuwa kuna mambo fulani ambayo mimi mwenyewe singetaka kukubali, lakini kwa sababu ya shida ya wananchi nikatupa kando principles hizo nilizokuwa nashikilia kwa manufaa ya shida ya wananchi. Nitajiuzulu ama nitastaafu kipindi hiki cha miaka 5 ikisha. Wengine hawakuamini kwa sababu wanaamini power katika kontinenti la Afrika, kwamba kuna mtu anaweza kuwacha power ya urais. Power iko kwa wananchi, na sisi tu ni wadhamini yao. Hiyo kitawasaidia. Nasema haya kwa sababu nitaondoka kwa siasa ya moto, mimi kwa raia mwema. Lakini wale wanaozingatia kuongoza, msiweke Kenya chini. Msiweke msingi wa siasa zenu kwa chuki. Kama yuko mtu ametukana mimi, namsamehe. Na kama yuko mtu ambaye nimesema chochote ambaye kimeumiza roho yake, unisamehe.
We entered into these elections. Results came. The verdict of the people came out. Kanu won. Again, the same voice. Government of national unity. I would like to ask the Western world, what is this type of democracy? And I warned at that time that in Africa we are having problems of ethnicity. People did not listen to me. They thought I was clinging to one party and that I was a dictator. I was not a dictator. I was saying exactly the fears of the people.
When I talk about politics, people think I'm racialist. I'm not racialist at all. I'm an African, believing in nationhood. I told fellows in Western Province the other day that we all share sunshine.